"Sir, can you bury my sister?" The words came from something barely taller than the human's knee, spoken through chattering teeth in a language not meant for human mouths. The storm screamed around them, white and endless, but the question cut through the noise like a blade. The human froze, not because of the cold, but because of what the child was holding. Lieutenant Ethan Cross had survived 3 wars, 2 crashed landings, and 1 year stranded on hostile worlds. None of that prepared him for this. The child was alien, small and thin, with pale turquoise skin and large silver eyes rimmed red from crying. In his arms was a bundle of woven thermal cloth. Inside it lay a smaller shape, still and unnaturally quiet. The planet Calaris, 9 was not meant for life like this. Ice storms could last for weeks. Wind could flay exposed skin in minutes. Ethan's emergency pod had gone down 12 days ago, far from any Terran rescue lane. The local species, the Valari, had allowed him shelter on the edge of their settlement, but they avoided him. Humans were rare here. Dangerous, some believed. Ethan knelt slowly, lowering himself to the child's level. His armored survival coat hissed as its heating coils adjusted. "What's your name?" Ethan asked softly. "Awen," the child said. His voice cracked. "This is my sister, Kesa. She stopped breathing last night." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. He scanned the bundle with his wrist scanner, already knowing the result. No heartbeat. No metabolic heat. The storm had claimed her. "Where are your parents?" Ethan asked. Owen looked down. Mother went quiet in the last storm. Father never came back from the ice fields. No panic. No dramatics. Just facts, spoken by a child who had already learned what loss sounded like. Ethan looked toward the settlement lights glowing faintly through the snow. "Did you ask the elders?" "They said the ground is frozen," Owen replied. "They said she must wait." Ethan stood. The wind battered his coat, but his voice was steady. "Come inside." Awen hesitated. "They said humans don't stay." "I will," Ethan said. Inside Ethan's shelter, the temperature stabilized. Ethan stared in wonder at the warmth, at the glowing panels, at the soft hum of Terran tech. Ethan placed the small body on a flat surface and covered it with a preservation sheet from his medical kit, activating stasis. "She won't change," Ethan said. "Not until we're ready." Owen nodded, gripping his own arms. Ethan handed him a nutrient pack adjusted for Valari biology. Owen devoured it in seconds. "When did you last eat?" Ethan asked. 2 suns ago." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Outside, something boomed. The shelter shook. Warning lights flickered red. The storm had escalated. Ethan checked the external sensors. Settlement power was unstable. Heating grid failure was spreading fast. If the Valari central core went down, hundreds would freeze. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Awen, stay here. Don't touch anything glowing." Owen looked up, fear flashing across his face. "You're leaving." "I'm fixing something," Ethan said. "I'll come back." Owen studied him carefully, then nodded. "You promised." Ethan stepped back into the storm. The Valari central hub was chaos. Elders argued. Technicians struggled with frozen conduits. Power was dropping by the minute. A tall Valari woman turned when Ethan entered. Her skin bore the markings of a systems engineer. "You," she said. "Human. You understand machines." "I understand cold," Ethan replied. "And broken systems." She hesitated, then pointed. The geothermal link froze. "We cannot reach it." Ethan followed her into the maintenance tunnels, his human body enduring what Valari could not. His fingers worked fast, bypassing frozen regulators, rerouting energy through auxiliary loops never meant to be used. Terran engineers had designed humans to survive where logic said they shouldn't. The lights flickered, then stabilized. Warmth spread. Cheers echoed through the tunnels. When Ethan returned to his shelter hours later, Anne was exactly where he left him, sitting beside his sister, humming a soft Valari morning tone. Ethan knelt. "The storm will break soon," Owen looked up. Can you bury her then? Ethan swallowed. Yes. Owen's shoulders shook, but this time, not from fear. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, something ancient and powerful had begun to change. And the galaxy had no idea what this single promise would unleash. The storm broke at dawn. Not gently. Not quietly. The wind did not apologize as it weakened, and the sky did not clear all at once. Instead, the blizzard loosened its grip slowly, like a wounded predator retreating step by step. Sheets of ice slid from rooftops. Snow settled into deep, uneven drifts. The cold remained, but it was survivable now. Lieutenant Ethan Cross stood outside his shelter, scanning the horizon. His beacon blinked steadily on his wrist. Terran rescue would arrive in a few days at most. Behind him, Owen stepped out, wrapped in layers Ethan had adjusted and repaired through the night. The child clutched the small preservation container holding his sister. Is it time? Owen asked. Ethan nodded. It is. They walked toward the outskirts of the Valari settlement, toward a stretch of land untouched by structures or power lines. The ground was still frozen solid, harder than stone. Ethan tested it with his boot, then with a compact thermal cutter from his survival kit. The tool hummed. Steam rose. Slowly, impossibly, the ice began to yield. Several Valari watched from a distance. Whispers spread. A human digging into sacred frost. Among the Valari, burial was not a simple act. The dead were traditionally returned to crystal caverns beneath the settlement, places sealed by law and ritual. Outsiders were never allowed there, not even during disasters. An elder approached, tall and severe, his markings dark with authority. Human, the elder said. Stop. Ethan did not turn around. I'm burying a child. She belongs to our people, the elder replied. Her rest must follow our ways. Owen's fingers tightened around the container. His voice shook. They said she must wait. The elder's eyes flicked to the boy. You are too young to decide. Ethan finally turned. She froze because waiting mattered more than helping, he said calmly. I won't wait. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Anger. Fear. Shock. You challenge our laws, the elder said. I challenge indifference, Ethan replied. He returned to the work. The thermal cutter bit deeper. His breath steamed. Sweat froze on his brow. Human muscles strained against a planet that wanted him gone. When the grave was finished, Ethan knelt and helped Owen lower the container inside. Owen placed a small carved stone on top. So she can find the stars, he whispered. Ethan covered the grave, packing the snow down carefully. He removed his glove and placed his bare hand against the frozen ground, ignoring the pain. I promise, he said quietly, she won't be forgotten. Silence followed. Then something unexpected happened. One Valari stepped forward. Then another. Then another. They placed stones. Small tokens. Simple gestures. No words. The elder watched, rigid, as tradition cracked under something stronger than law. That night, the settlement spoke of the human. Some called him reckless. Others called him brave. Children whispered a new word. Protector. Ethan returned to his shelter with Owen. The boy moved closer now, no longer keeping distance. Will they take me away? Owen asked suddenly. Ethan paused. Who? The elders. Or my uncle. He will come. Ethan had seen the records while repairing the grid. Owen's uncle had claimed guardianship years ago, then abandoned the family when resources grew scarce. If they try, Ethan said, choosing his words carefully, they'll have to talk to me. Owen looked up. Humans don't give up, do they? Ethan smiled faintly. No, we don't. The next day, the settlement council convened. Ethan stood before them alone. Owen waited outside, watching the door. The elders spoke of law, of tradition, of balance. Ethan listened. Then he spoke. You live on one of the harshest worlds in this sector, he said. And you survived it without us. I respect that. But survival isn't just enduring cold. It's choosing who you protect when it costs you something. The room was silent. You think humanity conquered the stars with weapons, Ethan continued. We didn't. We did it by refusing to accept that suffering is just the way things are. The youngest council member shifted uneasily. Ethan finished simply. If caring for one child breaks your system, then your system is already broken. Outside, Owen hugged his knees, waiting. The door finally opened. Ethan stepped out. Owen searched his face. Am I in trouble? Ethan knelt. No. Owen blinked. Then. They didn't give you to your uncle, Ethan said. They're still arguing. But they listened. Owen exhaled shakily. That night, Ethan's beacon chimed again. Terran Alliance ship Tess Horizon's Reach had entered orbit. Extraction in 48 hours. Ethan stared at the message longer than he should have. Owen noticed. You're leaving, the boy said quietly. Yes, Ethan replied. Then paused. But not without a fight. Far above Kalari's 9, sensors aboard the Terran ship began recording something unusual. Valari communications traffic surged. Legal codes were being challenged. Emergency clauses activated. And at the center of it all was one human who refused to walk away. The galaxy was about to learn something it had forgotten. Humans do not abandon their promises. And when they stand between a child and injustice, even ancient civilizations begin to tremble. The uncle arrived at sunrise. His name was Vila, and he came wrapped in authority and cold confidence. His skin was darker than most Valari, marked with the sharp lines of a merchant caste, one that valued resources over people. He did not look at the small grave outside the settlement. He did not look at Owen at first. He looked at Ethan. You are the human, Vila said. The problem. Ethan stood between Vila and the shelter door without thinking. You're late. Vila's eyes narrowed. My nephew belongs to me. By law. Owen's small hand slipped into Ethan's coat. The gesture was quiet, instinctive, and it said more than words ever could. He doesn't want to go with you, Ethan said. Vila finally looked down at the child. Children fear discipline, he replied. Fear hunger. Fear correction. Owen flinched. That was enough. Ethan stepped forward just one pace. His voice stayed calm, but something hard lived underneath it. He survived storms you ran from. He buried his sister with dignity when your people told him to wait. You don't get to claim him now. This world is not yours, Vila snapped. Your kind leaves when it grows inconvenient. Ethan smiled, slow and sharp. You've misunderstood humans. The council gathered again, tension thick in the air. Elders whispered. Laws were cited. Ancient tablets glowed with old decisions made for simpler times. Vila spoke confidently. He had influence. He had trade power. He had precedent. Ethan had none of that. What he had was time, data, and human stubbornness. That night, while Owen slept, Ethan accessed the settlement's public archives. Valari law was rigid, but like all systems, it had loopholes. Old emergency statutes. Forgotten clauses written during near-extinction events. He worked through the night. Humans had survived because they learned one truth early. When rules fail people, rules must change. By morning, Ethan was ready. The council reconvened. Vila stood smug and prepared. Ethan stepped forward and projected a legal document into the air. Article 17, he said. Emergency custodial protection. Written during the ice collapse era. Murmurs erupted. The eldest council member leaned forward. That law has not been invoked in centuries. Because no one needed it, Ethan replied. Until now. The clause was simple. If a child's life or mental well-being was at risk, and no suitable guardian could be verified, temporary off-world asylum could be granted, if another civilization accepted responsibility. Vila's expression changed. That law was never meant for outsiders. It doesn't say that, Ethan said. Silence. Terran Alliance law, Ethan continued, recognizes Valari sapience, which means this child can legally request asylum. All eyes turned to Owen. The boy stepped forward, trembling but upright. I choose him, Owen said, pointing at Ethan. He stayed. The council erupted into argument. Vila shouted. Elders demanded time. Traditions were invoked like weapons. Then the sky rumbled. Not thunder. Engines. The TES horizon's reach descended through the clouds, vast and unmistakable. The galaxy had arrived. Terran envoys emerged, calm and precise. They listened. They recorded. They did not threaten. They waited. Ethan stood with Owen at his side. Vila realized too late what he was facing. Humans did not rush decisions, but once they committed, they moved with terrifying unity. The council voted. By the narrowest margin in recorded Valari history, asylum was granted. Vila stormed out, reputation shattered. Owen looked up at Ethan, eyes wide. Does this mean? It means, Ethan said softly, you're coming with me. If you want. Owen hugged him without hesitation. The departure was quiet. Valari citizens gathered, not in anger, but in reflection. Some bowed. Some touched the frozen ground where Kesa rested. A promise had been kept. As the shuttle lifted, signals rippled outward. Other worlds watched. Other species noticed. Reports spread across trade networks and diplomatic channels. A human had defied law, not with violence, but with care. A child had been saved. And an ancient people had been forced to ask themselves a dangerous question. If humans could do this, what else were they capable of? And sat beside the viewport, watching his world shrink. Will I forget her? He asked suddenly. Ethan shook his head. No. Humans don't forget the people we love. We carry them forward. Owen leaned against him. Far beyond Kalari's 9, something larger had begun. Not a war. Not an invasion. A reputation. The galaxy was learning that when humans said yes to a single small request, they changed everything that followed. Standard. Learned how to laugh again. One evening, as stars drifted past the viewport, he asked Ethan a question that carried the weight of a galaxy. Why do humans do this? Ethan considered. Because once, he said, we were the ones waiting. Owen leaned against him, comforted. Far beyond them, powers recalculated. They had misunderstood humanity. They thought humans were dangerous because they fought hard. They were wrong. Humans were dangerous because they cared, and once they started, they did not stop. The galaxy was changing. And it all traced back to a question asked in the snow. Years later, historians would argue about the exact moment the galaxy changed. Some would point to treaties rewritten. Others to borders softened. A few would cite the rise of human-led humanitarian fleets. But those who truly understood always returned to one place. A frozen grave on Kalari's 9. The Terran memorial beacon stood there now, simple and quiet. No fortress. No flag. Just a marker etched in multiple languages. Kesa of the Valari. Loved. Remembered. Never waiting again. The Valari visited often. So did others. They came not because humans demanded it, but because something about that place felt different. Like a scar that had healed into strength. Ethan Cross stood there once more, older now, lines etched into his face by time instead of war. His uniform bore no medals. He had stopped wearing them years ago. Beside him stood Owen. Not a child anymore. Owen had grown tall by Valari standards, his silver eyes sharp with intelligence and warmth. He wore a Terran jacket modified for his physiology, the emblem still stitched over the chest, faded, but intact. You never told me, Owen said quietly, why you really stayed that first night. Ethan looked at the horizon, remembering the storm, the shaking shelter, the small voice asking an impossible question. I told myself I was just buying time, Ethan said. Humans lie to themselves like that when the truth scares them. Owen smiled faintly. And the truth? The truth, Ethan said, was that I knew if I walked away, I would survive. But I wouldn't be human anymore. They stood in silence. Across the galaxy, the effects of that choice had multiplied beyond calculation. Human-led aid coalitions now operated in dozens of systems. Not governments. Not empires. Networks. Voluntary. Adaptive. Relentless. They trained alien engineers in Terran survival design. Shared modular shelters. Taught legal literacy to species who had never questioned authority. Most importantly, they listened. Empires learned quickly that brutality no longer stayed hidden. Every action was recorded. Every injustice broadcast. Every child given a name and a face. Wars became harder to justify. Cruelty became expensive. On the council world that once plotted the ambush, leadership had changed. Old doctrines fell. New voices rose. A former imperial advisor summarized it best in a classified report. Humans do not conquer worlds. They make it impossible for others to rule them the same way again. Owen became something unprecedented. A bridge. He spoke for the displaced in councils that once ignored them. He understood alien tradition and human defiance. He translated not just language, but intent. When asked where his loyalty lay, he always answered the same way. With those who refused to let children wait. On the anniversary of Case's burial, a Valari elder approached Ethan. "You broke our laws," the elder said. Ethan nodded. "I did." "And in doing so," the elder continued, "you saved us from becoming something smaller than we believed." He bowed. Not to a human, but to a promise. As the sun dipped below the ice horizon, Owen placed a new stone at the grave. This one carried dozens of names, children from worlds who had survived storms of different kinds. "They all asked the same thing," Owen said softly. Ethan closed his eyes. "And now? Now they don't have to ask anymore." The galaxy had learned a lesson it could not unlearn. That strength was not measured in fleets. That power did not always arrive with fire. That sometimes, the most dangerous thing in existence, was a species that heard a small voice in the snow and answered yes. Far across the stars, when distress signals were sent, a new expectation followed. Not hope. Certainty. Because everyone knew what happened next. Humans would come. And they would keep the promise.